If you'd have asked me whether Giants would be requalifying 3 months ago, I would have said you were kidding.
Yep.
That Giants look to be on a downtrend, but they have come back with a revamped roster looking fantastic.
I think it's so true. The revamped roster, no Spaniards to speak of this time round. Giants had steadily been moving away from their all-Spanish team. They've got a lot of mixed nationalities on the stage. You can see Minitroupax proudly sitting with his Portuguese flag behind him.
No Tristana this time as we look into the draft for Giants. It was game 2 where they picked this up as first pick. We've gone quickly through the rest of the draft. No Galio for Giants again. Will Giants prioritize the Jarvan that we actually have seen Schalke first picking in this game, or will it be something else they look for? This is the first time without Tristana we're seeing our Giants will prioritize highest.
All right, Thresh is something else that has been banned many times and does get locked in for Jactroll.
Yeah, Jactroll, his most played, or most banned champion, I should say. He defaulted over towards Braum heavily after that. Jactroll has shown us pretty good Thresh performances when he got his hands on it. Schalke now looking for the Jarvan for themselves. Where do we go on AD carry? Xayah is there, the Caitlyn.
I don't think the Varus was that great because of all of the engage.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying the pick was bad or the way it was played was bad. It's just the way Giants dealt with it was fantastic. Let's see where they decide to go. Xayah, the obvious option. With the escape, with that safety tool, Minitroupax can fall back to Caitlyn if he wants to. Something we've seen happen quite a lot unless he pivots and goes for one of those late scaling carries, which were banned out. I mean, Cogmore was banned in the previous game.
I don't necessarily think the Cogmore will come through here. Giants, Minitroupax has played so many different champions. He's got the Jhin in the mix. You've got the Misfortune that he's played. If they do go the Misfortune, that'll signal heavy team fighting. But if Giants don't pick up an AD carry here, they're going to have a lot of bans put their way again in the second phase. Caitlyn would make the most sense.
Starting to see more and more as we watch patch 7.16. How AD carries being targeted and banned away continues to be a thing. We're seeing it in Challenger, we're seeing it in LCS. And one of the things Giants can do to pivot in their team comp, with Galio gone, one of the options the analyst desk talked about for their game 2 or game 1 loss was an Orianna. So it's going to give you some team fights, some scaling, strong lane as well. Yeah,
I like the Orianna as a blind pick. Not many matchups do very well, and this is what I was expecting to see out of Schalke. The complete pivot away. Now that Galio isn't there, LeBlanc, Caedrel had some fantastic performances in the regular split as that LeBlanc. Expecting to see it come through and have a lot of success once again. They'll be needing Caedrel to carry this game, looking at it, if the result goes the previous ways of this series.
Well, there's no room for error now. Schalke, 1 game left. If they lose it, they will face either Mysterious Monkeys or Ninjas in Pajamas tomorrow for that final EU LCS spot. Because that would mean Giants qualify. As no AD carries locked in for Minitroupax, Caitlyn is banned away. Alistair's the reply from Giants.
Oh, if we see a support that is squishy locked in by Schalke here, and not something like a Braum, Misfortune is a possibility for Minitroupax, because look, Orianna is there, Maokai is there for team fighting. You're up against the Xayah, who if you go defensive support, both of them will be squishy if they have a low amount of sustain. I kind of want to see it.
Oh, I'd love to. I would love to see Misfortune.
Braum here would deny it, and they're actually saving their bottom lane matchup. I think this is very smart, because if Giants go for something unorthodox like the Misfortune, you can actually pick into it and do a good job. So we're looking at top lane potentially, or jungle, with that AD carry now for Giants.
What is the more safe option if MF is the one that we're excited to see, but maybe less likely?
Varus is probably the more likely. The Jhin is another. We are waiting to see what Minitroupax is going to pick up. So, Gnar into Poppy. We saw this matchup, Ruin playing it last week. Ruin actually had a decent job on the Poppy, playing disengage, denying the engage. Of course, he's going to be able to block the Jarvan coming into the fray. And the Gnar, that's a Vayne. Without knowing the enemy support, is quite aggressive and risky.
There is deadly serious looks on the side of Giants when Minitroupax had Vayne locked in for him by Jactroll. He very confidently sat back in the chair, and that means it's Vayne plus Thresh into Xayah Tahm Kench.
And the Thresh is one of the key components of why the Tahm Kench has come out here, because if the Thresh can't land hooks in the lane, you don't set Vayne up particularly well. Now Schalke can play on the defensive. You'll have the roaming potential out from Caedrel to come down to the bottom lane should you want it. Schalke have almost a full bot lane party setup if they wanted to set that for themselves. Same can be said, Tahm Kench would allow them to roam to the top side as well. A lot of versatility in Schalke's composition. Giants, if they get ahead, will stay ahead because you've now got a Vayne high carry potential. You've got Orianna to have impact in team fights. The Poppy has been very good for Ruin as well. This just got a whole lot more exciting again.
All right, let's see what Minitroupax can do. We made a joke as we came back from the ad break about how he was upstaged by an AP Galio. Maybe some of that actually has some hints of truth. He's going to pull out the Vayne here. Minitroupax, when he has played these unique champions, one game Tristana 803, one game Misfortune 1004, one game Kog'Maw 307, one game Jhin 905, leading up to today, and now it's one game Vayne. Will the scoreline remain true, Stress? What do you think when you look at this team comp?
Oh, I think it's a risky play because you are kind of relying on the defensive play out of Gilius and Ruin to at least provide frontline here and give Minitroupax the room to breathe. But if there's one thing normally Giants can bank on, it's the fact that Minitroupax does get a lot of room in these exchanges. Schalke can shut it down, though. That's the thing. If you can get the Jarvan, the LeBlanc somehow to lock, it is possible to shut this Vayne down.
It always is when you have those scaling AD carries. But then when you look at it, the split pushing threat, Minitroupax can survive the burst damage from Caedrel. Maybe he can go toe-to-toe with Smittyj later in the game. Get some items under his belt. Definitely going to have some possibilities. So let's talk about the laning matchups. Poppy into Gnar. I feel like Ruin's going to be bullied a little bit in that mini Gnar form. But he's got some support from Gilius if he needs it.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw Ruin. He will itemize a mix of items. He'll pick up the Balmy Cinder, the Glacial Shroud. He'll pick up a bunch of different components and then just sit in the lane and just say, okay, Smittyj, I don't have a completed item, but I'm fine against you. Gets a lot of resistances passively from his abilities as well. So Ruin won't be too far pressed without Memento's assistance from Smittyj.
When we look at the mid lane, Fall Alarm, Orianna into LeBlanc, lots of wave clear.
Well, less wave clear now, I think, is the interesting one. We haven't seen as much LeBlanc on 716, but the big hit to LeBlanc was the fact that her Q that bounces through the minions actually does a little less damage. It's enough that LeBlanc can't just push out and roam to any lane freely. But Caedrel has got that TP, so it means he can actually set up for a few more plays than just roaming out. I think this is a very interesting matchup because you've got carry potential for Caedrel, high carry potential for Minitroupax. This is a very explosive setup for Game 4.
Well, you talked about the high carry potential for Minitroupax. Ignite is the summon spell for Jactroll into the exhaust for Norskeren. What do you think of the 2v2 and how it's going to play out? Because this is arguably the most exciting. You may not be able to answer that yet.
On mid lane for now. Jiizuke doesn't get jumped on yet. Okay, I can talk about the 2v2 because Memento, I believe, walked over the ward to come into lane. So 2v2 bottom lane. Thresh is going to try and hook upset. And it's not going to work too well once Tahm Kench has Devour. That's one difficulty here. You can then try and hook the Tahm Kench, which is part of the reason why this Ignite comes through, because you want to deny some of the heal, deny some of the grey health heal that comes back at the end of it as well. That doesn't really apply too much, but if you can get Norskeren low and then follow up for a kill, that's the perfect scenario, but very difficult to make it work.
Let's see whether or not Minitroupax and Jactroll can. We had a few jokes earlier about upsets in Norskeren, how their 2v2 lane is just in such a great spot. They were, of course, playing Xayah and Rakan, and now Minitroupax and Jactroll have to interrupt it, get in their way. Even start to this laning phase, as Giants are one Nexus away from requalifying. They pull up the Vayne in that matchup.
That's quite a lot of risk and guts being put out there.
But they've got that extra game, right?
Yes.
If they lose, they know there's a game 5, and they have side selection where they can pick red and opt into some counter picks.
Yeah. Memento was spotted, I believe. No, actually wasn't spotted on a ward, so Jiizuke has to flash. Observers were actually showing us Schalke's vision. They knew that Gilius was up on the top side. Able to get a flash then. This is the difficult point for Jiizuke, because now he's not got a flash in a lane that has kill threat in it with the LeBlanc. Gilius is heading topside, though. The ward just died behind Smittyj.
Oh, look at the pin against the wall. Heroic charge from Ruin setting this up. Hammer Shock is going to be good. Steadfast Presence was beautiful. Smittyj gets interrupted. Flashes traded back and forth, but as Mega was about to pop, Giants decide not to chase further.
Also, you can see Giants learning from the mistakes of Schalke in the previous game. They didn't have vision on Memento. They knew he had been top side of the map, but didn't know how close he was. So Giants, it's a 1-for-1 trade on the flashes, and they back away. Ruin will have to push this wave out and try and recall himself. Smittyj opting for double Dorans to try and get a laning advantage. He wants to push as much as he can when it comes to harassing Ruin.
Now there's no room for error. By the way, Memento's re-roaming to mid lane. Ethereal Chains is going to connect. The knockup does as well. Cleanse comes up. There's no flash for Jiizuke. Down to one lost auto. Caedrel gets the hit. Takes 2 tower shots and trades his life. Jiizuke for Caedrel. It's not over yet. Gilius tries to reply back, but the flag and drag gets Memento to safety.
Oh, Caedrel had to stick around just long enough to end up taking that tower shot so that he could pick up the kill on Jiizuke. So first blood goes over to Schalke, but that should have been a little cleaner. Good usage of the Jarvan to get into the middle lane, deny any kind of potential for Jiizuke to survive through this laning phase. There's a heavy CS lead as well on top of this, but Caedrel, oh, if he'd have got away with that without dying, that would have been a big, big win for Schalke. I want to see how long Caedrel actually needed to stay under the tower for. Look, Chains Lock, Cleanse came out. Jiizuke was on the run. Oh, Caedrel was just outside of auto attack range and had to flash. Looks like the minion gave him a little trouble on the way out there. Just for a moment, like a split second, but it was enough for the tower shot to come through. Caedrel's roaming though. He knows he wants to compound this and get a bit more of a lead.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is less visible. The minions that were killed off by Gilius, the experience that was lost as well. Caedrel's got a small level advantage. And Jiizuke now playing the Orianna. Remember, his Galio from the last game was banned. If you look at the damage on that champion, average damage in wins for Galio per minute, 399. Jiizuke dealt 555 damage per minute in his 26-minute victory, plus 40%. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty high, as you see, for a Galio. From mid laner, people would be like, 550.
I love the picture as well.
He was cashing in. That's what that was about. Jiizuke,
I think he's dead.
Yeah.
Pretty clearly here. Memento and Caedrel, they make that look easy with Jiizuke with no flash.
See, Jiizuke banked all the money, like stacked it up in the last game, and this is more of a bank robbery coming from Schalke, because they're just collapsing on mid lane again and again, just snowballing themselves, and that's what this LeBlanc needed to do. It's a complete change of pace for Schalke. This is what I wanted to see looking at the loss in the last game, is say, okay, put some more weight on Caedrel's shoulders, show us that he can carry like we know he can.
And that's what Caedrel's doing. 1-1-1. Got a gigantic CS advantage. And Schalke have killed Giants members enough to get a 1,000 gold lead. Some interesting items immediately picked up. Oh, that death sentence flew pretty far. But the Devour from Norskeren was good. Moby Boots picked up for Gilius's Maokai. Double Doran's Ring for Jiizuke. Double Doran's Blade, which you've mentioned already, for Smittyj. And Caedrel's got himself that Dark Seal. Let's see how confident he's feeling as the game plays out.
Ruin, one of the only top laners that is so heavily invested in Bramblebest. I actually like it in a lot of situations because a lot of the AD top laners I like to trade with you do kind of get shut down. He's built it basically every game that he can, and it makes sense. So it did delay him in game 1 to get to his build. This game, he's behind in CS again, so it's another road bump on the way to his items.
It feels less bad on a Poppy, though.
Yeah, exactly, because, again, we talked about the resistances that are going to come from his abilities on top of it, so Ruin should be fine.
Yeah, and of course, when you look at the composition, Ruin going up against auto-attacker in Smittyj, AD caster in Memento's Jarvan, auto-attacker in Upset, so gonna have a little more benefit. Minitroupax gets interrupted by the tongue lash. Schalke, small wins across the map. Some of them very large, in fact. Look at the CS numbers, Thresh. Plus 20 in the top lane. Nearly that in the mid lane. Gilius, once again, the game is starting to fall apart around him.
Yeah, he hasn't had the impact yet, but of course on the Maokai, we know later on in the game he's going to be able to team fight quite effectively. It's Memento that's had that early game impact so far. He hasn't been able to actually shop yet, so his individual emphasis won't be felt, and Gilius is actually a level up on him because of the time Memento has spent trying to get the ganks to work, but it's still good for Schalke. It's still what they want here. The leads are going to be effective the longer this game goes.
It's actually very exciting for Schalke if the Jarvan LeBlanc combination is working and finding kills. That's how I think they can unlock playing around the next 10 to 15 minutes. Move those two around the map. You've got a teleport on Caedrel. Cataclysm is great. You can't tumble out of that one if you're Minitroupax. So see if you can get that flash down and maybe put some additional pressure on the guys.
And of course, Minitroupax, they're going to have to try and lock him down in some of the exchanges when he goes into his ult form. That final hour, of course, will provide a little bit of stealthiness throughout the fight.
Yeah, some frustration for Caedrel's target selection. But then Upset can just cover it with the AoE feathers and just lock him in place, right?
Throw feathers everywhere. It's like tarring and feathering the Vayne. It doesn't matter where she goes. You're going to get locked down at some point.
Oh, I like that. Tarring and feathering Minitroupax's Vayne. That's how Schalke intend to win these fights. It's a Mountain Drake as well. So let's see whether or not Schalke get their hands on the objective. Gilius making his way down. Got one control ward in his inventory. Gonna walk straight over a Schalke ward, in fact, but doesn't risk sticking around. Remember, Gilius lost his life earlier in this game. Memento managed to flag and drag over the wall, condemned by some time. Lantern used by Gilius. Great communication from Giants. Minitroupax realizing he's not a threat. He didn't click the Lantern.
Yep.
Oh, death sentence, insta-devour. If it's not Norskeren being death sentenced, I'll try not to get too excited.
I know, right? You just every time you're like, oh yes, the hook has landed. One of the most satisfying sound effects, I think, of when the hook actually does land. But look, Schalke, although they didn't get the ultimate to properly work, they didn't get any flashes or anything like that, it's enough presence. Caedrel had pushed out the middle lane enough that Schalke look over towards the Mountain Drake. And this is starting to become quite a large lead here.
Oh, yes.
CS lead still maintaining, now into the Dragons. It's even just presence in the bottom lane, pushing out, trying to get damage down on that turret. You can see it's already under a third of its health. And with a Mountain Drake, that's just going to get worse. Whereas Giants are kind of looking for a skirmish that'll turn this game back in their favor. The perfect situation almost for Giants will be that a Shockwave drops 2 or 3 targets low and Minitroupax picks up a couple of kills off the back end of a skirmish. But look, Caedrel is going to do that way more effectively on this LeBlanc.
And the Mountain Drake potential, second Mountain Drake, is a way that Schalke can accelerate in the mid-game. They've already got themselves nearly 2,000 gold in the lead. They're in control of every single lane, and Memento is going to have freedom. He can pick where he wants to go, which lane he wants to jump on. And then if that goes well, the tower falls immediately thereafter. There's a lot of auto attackers, a lot of damage. Caedrel's going to be going for that Gunblade build. Complement that with the Mountain Drake, and towers, they get deaded very, very quickly.
They do, they do. That's Schalke's prerogative here. On the other side, Giants, they do have a tank-busting AD carry. The Vayne will be able to do quite well with the Silver Bolts, so despite the fact that Gnar, Jarvan, Tahm, Kench should provide a good front line to that, if Minitroupax survives... What time frame?
That's the question.
Like, quite late.
Yeah.
Like 2, 3, 4 items late is the real point at which Minitroupax is really going to have an impact, even going Infinity Edge. Over the years, we've seen a lot of different Vayne builds. We had the double the charge items came
Static
through for a little time.
Rapid fire cannon,
worked very well.
Blade
a lot of solo
King,
queue.
plus Gwynzoo's was a thing for a little while. A lot of those on-hit style, but Giants realizing they're in trouble. They pull the lane swap. Thresh, what do you make of this? Giants sacrifice tower first blood, but it is in exchange for a tower of their own.
Yeah, the tower first blood for Schalke, I think that is exactly what they want to continue this gold generation from themselves. I don't think it's a problem that Schalke, that Giants get a tower in the top lane. Schalke will be fine with that. It's almost an inevitable fact here because Schalke are still increasing that lead for themselves. Now, the question is, where do they send Caedrel? Because he doesn't really want to be just sat mid lane at this point. He has TP available. He wants to try and be maybe even working with Smittyj to get kills out in the side lane on somebody like Ruin if he stretches out too far.
All right, Smittyj making his way towards that Black Cleaver, plus 30 CS over Ruin. Caedrel's had that Gunblade completed for a little while, and he's going up against Merc Treads and the makings of Morello Nomaton. Jiizuke
There's the damage.
Just gets insta-popped. I mean, Caedrel and upset comboed him down so quickly.
I mean, that's the thing about the fed LeBlanc, easily able to just walk into the middle lane. Gilius has itemized. He's only got the Cinder Hulk, doesn't have a whole lot of more health from that. And this game is so heavily in favor of Schalke right now as they're just walking through that this timing for Giants composition just needs another 20 minutes really before they're going to be able to take much of any kind of fight, because remember, Ruin, his build will be in tatters for a while. Gilius, he can provide frontline threat, but this LeBlanc just destroyed him under tower. There isn't too much to offer in fights.
And it's a worrying thought for Giants, because Schalke is one of those teams that just accelerates a lead to victory. Yeah. They're not a team that you go, well, maybe their macro's not great. Well, maybe they might dilly-dally about. No, they're going to wait for Baron, bait it, and then either take it or kill you trying to defend it. That's something Schalke has done in the past many times.
And both teams have actually shown that they're good at playing from being ahead with that macro style. Like Schalke did it in Game 1, Giants did it Games 2 and 3. The thing is, we haven't seen too much of them playing from behind, and that's the difficult thing. One of the questions I had for Minitroupax is how would he and Giants react when put in bad matchups, when they have to play from behind? And this is one of those situations where a lot is going to be on his shoulders. On this Vayne, the later we go, and we're going to get the answer to how used to playing from behind is he.
Yep, and how coordinated can Giants be when at a deficit. You know, it's conceding, it's losing with grace. That's important. You can see the CSD on your screen at the top there, plus 24.7 between the 3 games. Smittyj was up 28 CS in Game 1, up 23 CS in Game 3, but he was down 20 in Game 2. I know. The only reason it's funny, this game he's up 15. At the end of the day, 3 out of 4, phenomenal numbers, great play from Smittyj.
I was going to suggest that that was basically like an 8-game streak because of how much he did against Kikis in the lane, but no, ruined the ruined streak. 1
game ruins the streak. But just highlighting how good Smittyj is. Caedrel goes for the burst, but those chains fell ever so short. And Schalke are now squashing the hopes of Giants. It's up to 4,500. It's 3 towers to 1.
Rift Herald was used in the top side. It was due to expire soon, so Schalke just wanting to get that out there, make as much of a play as they can. It didn't really have much of an impact. But look, all 3 lanes are pushing out. Now they're going mid lane because they can group with the Tahm Kench ultimate. Jiizuke does have his ultimate. That's what they got to be careful of. Dodged out.
Shockwave. Dodged out by upset. He just used a great Feather Storm. Now Gilius is the next target. Ruin uses that steadfast presence to buy a few seconds of time. The tower survives, but the Giants members do not. They've given up 2. Dragon spawns in about 5 seconds time, so Schalke can commit either to the tower and swing around, or just go straight for the dragon.
This series feels almost like anything you can do, I can do better, because the games are almost mirrored. Game 1 and 2 was mirrored, Game 3 and 4 now, because look, a lot of this comes from Schalke's desire to gank mid lane early on. They get Caedrel ahead. Now Caedrel looks to move out to the other areas of the map, try and snowball through. Very similar to what Giants found success with for Jiizuke. Yes, it was a Galio, very different performance, but still the ability to move between lanes and put pressure early is a complete change of pace to the first 2 games of this series.
Yeah, I get you. In terms of the style and the team swapping, the decisiveness here from Schalke is really just quite something to behold.
Yeah, as soon as Ruin is committed to the bottom side defense, the bottom lane is committed to the top side defense. Cleanse wasn't enough. The Lantern wasn't quite in time. Jactroll couldn't get the rest of his team out of there, and Schalke just taking full control again, walking through this game very confidently.
It's so exciting to see both of these teams, you know, number 1 and number 2 from Challenger. They won both of their matchups against, you know, LCS teams. And legitimately, they just look like LCS caliber. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of people who believe that Giants and Schalke will not be the 2 teams that qualify. Both of them look great last week. Both of them have put fantastic performances up here, from individual plays to teamwork to map play. It's a very exciting split for Challenger into LCS.
It really is. The Challenger team's looking at, on a significantly higher level strategically than we normally see. That's the clone. A little bit of a mind game out from Caedrel blocks the hook with the clone. And here comes the second phase of that play. Minitroupax may be alone here, but they're actually going on the top side.
All right, Minitroupax currently hitting minions. He can't find the champions. The risk is too great. Final hour was used. The shockwave catches 3. Minitroupax gets a kill. The cataclysm comes down. Minitroupax needs to do so much more work. Tumbles forward, flashes in, doesn't get the crit though. All uses the condemn to buy a few seconds of time. Caedrel gets one back onto Jiizuke. Giants with a potential win. They were too far behind.
Giants so close to getting Minitroupax to have another kill in that and look to work through the rest of the fight. But Schalke, as you said, too far ahead on the other side of that. Caedrel was able to solo down a few people on the side. And it was a split fight overall. But Giants come out behind from that. Schalke able to pick apart the rest of the Giants lineup and just put the gold lead so far in their favor.
It's an 8,000 gold lead.
That's not going to go well.
8,500 gold lead before 20 minutes. Minitroupax is shaking his head after that last kill.
That was
sacrifice.
Beautiful. The clone, as he's distorting away, it would have caught him, I believe, if he hadn't have actually cloned there. So this is Giants trying to commit to a fight here. The TP came out in response to the Abyssal Voyage. And look, Jactroll and Gilius trying to just disrupt as much as they can. Gilius couldn't get too much more from the fight. That was a beautiful shockwave. And then Minitroupax is able to burst down Norskeren before he could get the grey health off. From here, if Minitroupax maybe kills Upset, look at how low Smittyj was on the top side, but Caedrel is the real threat here. Just destroys Jiizuke again. And while we were in the replay, Schalke take the Baron, looking to take us to Game 5.
Oh, this is Game 5 in the making. Total damage dealt in that last fight. Caedrel and Upset definitely just going off. I think the quickest game this series has been around 25 minutes, and it was Giants squashing Schalke. Let's see whether or not Schalke can beat that record. 10,000 gold in the lead. Oh, silver scrapes on the way. Game 5, there's still another best of 5 after this, because the team that loses this series will play the winner of the next series. And I have no idea. We've had sort of alternating games, you know, slow, team fight heavy for games 1 and 2. Early domination for 3 and 4. What the hell do you guess going into Game 5 that these guys are going to pull out?
I don't think it'll be the silver bolts after silver scrapes.
No.
Because while the Vayne has not been the problem
Yes.
for the composition, like, it hasn't offered anything at the same time. And that's the difficulty here, because Schalke have fought too early, too often. And Caedrel has been the biggest problem in this game for Giants. Like, Caedrel just walks into lane, half health somebody, even has killed Gilius in this game, just under tower. And that was the threat of an assassin for Caedrel that we saw in the regular split that hadn't been shown this series. But I think this mid lane matchup just got turned up a couple of notches, because out come the assassins. Caedrel looks great.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. Caedrel, you know, he single-handedly took over this game. Once his LeBlanc was ganked for, I don't want to take anything away from Memento, because his ganks have been influential across the entire map. But then Caedrel just took that lead, took that small advantage, and ran with it. That's why this inhibitor's falling over at 22 minutes.
And it all came from a flashless Orianna getting re-ganked for that first blood. It looked like maybe it was botched, because Caedrel died under the tower, got blocked by the minion, and we thought, ooh, maybe that's not as good for Schalke as we expected. But out came the rest of the roams. Tahm Kench has played a great defensive setup against the Thresh. There have been no options.
No, there haven't. The exhaust is used on Minitroupax. The attack move is getting him to farm instead of hitting the champions. Minitroupax will not even be able to get a kill, because Caedrel and Upset take down Giants. It was a solo kill for Smittyj taking down Ruin. And for the quickest game this series, Schalke are finishing off the inhibitors. The Nexus turrets are falling. And we have one more game to find out who qualifies for EULCS.
Oh, it's been quite a back and forth series. And as we head to Game 5 between Schalke and Giants, Giants picked out one of their spicy picks and it didn't quite work for them. But it was mid lane after being a scaling battle. 3 games in a row, Caedrel changes up the entire game with the LeBlanc. And Schalke looked great. 6-1 and 8 on that LeBlanc.
Oh, what a performance. The players are ecstatic on your screens. Jactroll basically jumping for joy, in fact. Stress at 23 minutes and 13 seconds. That was the quickest game of Challenger Summer.
I'm not sure Jactroll will be jumping for joy on that one. Maybe Norskeren and the rest of Schalke. Jactroll couldn't get much to work for him because of the Tahm Kench on the opposite side. Like Thresh, we know is a great pick. Vayne can be a great pick, but up against Tahm Kench, difficult to get that to work.
It was the Gnar phase 2 pick for Smittyj that allowed the counter pick on the support. And it was the counter pick on the support that kept discussing whether or not Minitroupax was going to run the likes of Misfortune. And it didn't happen. Vayne wasn't the reason they lost. Wasn't the reason they lost at all. So now what do the teams do? Side selection goes back in favor of Giants. Giants just got crushed. How do you bounce back, Stress? What do they do? So
Giants go to red side. Try and put some pressure on mid lane a little bit, but you don't have that much freedom if you want to change up your ban. So much of it has been AD carry focused. So they basically have to ban Tristana, Kalista, get the Xayah for themselves, then put pressure on mid lane. There's a lot that has to happen in this draft for Schalke to get quite such a simple setup again. But I think that LeBlanc has to now raise priority throughout this. I think so, on the assumption Schalke ban away the Galio, because I think you could run that Galio into it, might be safe. I mean, there's questions that these teams are figuring out backstage. Norskeren, of course, very excited. Anyway, Schalke pulled off that clutch performance takes to game 5. Dragons Deficio, please tell us more.
Well, as you mentioned, Trevor, draft was once again one of our focuses looking at the desk. Now, before we get into our first replay, Deficio, tell me about Vayne. How do you feel about that champion? Give me a little insight here.
So, the last time I saw Vayne, when I casted, was Reckless who picked it for Fnatic. It was playoffs. Last split, my instant reaction was Vayne is garbage. He managed to win that game. Obviously, he was against Ezreal Tahm Kench, so it was a pure scaling bottom lane. And it was a very slow game. It actually succeeded. I still didn't like the pick. I see it again today. I cry a little bit because I still do not like Vayne. I just think that she's so limited in what she brings as a champion.
You mean damage? She brings damage eventually.
Eventually. She brings nothing else. She needs to sit in side lanes for the entire game, but she's not a great early game split pusher either because she can't push the waves fast enough. And then your entire team are kind of forced to play your style because you picked the one champion, and it's so hard to execute. Obviously, it wasn't just a Vayne in this case. There was a scaling top laner, a scaling jungler, a scaling mid laner, with the scaling AD carry. That means your early game is pretty damn bad.
Yeah, it's definitely not where they wanted it to be, but despite that, we did still see some clever adaptation coming in from their side. And as we pull up the first replay, Deficio, I want to have you run us through the early jungle start and kind of some of the clever adaptation on the side of Schalke, and also what Giants did to stop it from really ending the game immediately.
So we got to look at two things early on. First of all, let's look down here where you see this blue buff being started. You might be like, why on earth would an AD carry and a support just start blue buff randomly? It's because they want a fake leash. They want to spend mana, lose a bit of HP, and come back to lane a little bit later, so that Giants think that the Jarvan started here on this side. If you draw the Jarvan over there and kind of show his route down to mid lane, you guys will, of course, notice that this Jarvan, he's actually starting on red buff. So the hope here for Schalke is that this Orianna will stand a little bit more over here where I put the circle. Because obviously she's thinking the Jarvan is on the bottom side, so she's hovering to the top side, want to be safe, don't want to get early ganked, and Jarvan shows up and surprise, surprise, you get ganked level 2. However, Giants were actually ready for this one, so over there, you see that little ward?
Ooh,
can you just click on it right there? Oh, you got a bit of a line, it's fine. There is a ward, the tower can see the ward almost, but this one ward placed by Giants actually prevents this entire play from working, because when we roll the clip, you're going to notice how this Jarvan here, he's obviously going to walk through this ward, and then Giants are like, yeah, we see you. You're there. So obviously the Orianna is just going to hover to the bottom side instead. And this entire plan that actually was super cool, like this little fake leash with the bottom lane, got kind of interrupted
Thwarted by a single ward. Planning, research, strategy, one ward.
It was great research from Giants putting that ward down. So you can see the Orianna here, instead of standing right there, because she thinks the Jarvan is going to gank from this side in, well, she's obviously standing on the bottom side because she knows the Jarvan is right there. So Jarvan can't really do anything. The whole thing is kind of wasted. And as we just run it out, you can see how Jarvan is not really able to accomplish anything.
Wasted a lot of time here. Despite this, Memento was still able to find success, and he was kind of one of the big contributing factors. He did successfully chain gank the lane after that. He did snowball that LeBlanc, and we started to see the composition just fall apart on the side of Giants. And as we pull up our next play, we can see, I would say, Schalke just they get a lead, and now they're showing us exactly what they can do once they get it. A lot of confidence in terms of execution.
Yeah, the biggest thing we kind of highlighted about Schalke going into this game was really good shot calling. Like, actually good shot calling as a team, good macro understanding. And when you see some of these quick rotations where they're punishing these very late scaling champions on the side of Giants, you just have to praise it, because it's not just, you know, go in and just fight all the time. They won't necessarily win you the game. You actually got to cleanly start taking down these turrets.
And this is the moment where we were skeptical, hey, why a Tahm Kench over Rakan? But as we look at the replay, as we look at the pressure coming in, you can see the value that Tahm Kench brings with his Abyssal Voyage and how he allows them to just essentially outmaneuver the entire Giants lineup.
Yeah, it all started with the Rift Ult on top side to force 3 members to defend on top side, while the LeBlanc, of course, is winning the mid lane. And then there's set up this quick rotation with Tahm Kench into mid, get another team fight they manage to win, get more damage on this tower. And that's kind of the key thing about snowballing comps, is the main objective is actually not getting, you know, 5 million kills, it's killing towers. It's removing towers from the map, so the enemy team is pushed so far back down in their own base, they can't even leave. They can't farm their own jungle, they can't stop dragons or barons, they just have to sit there and wait.
And it's a beautiful thing to watch. As we pull up our 4th replay, you can see, definitely not the final team fight, there were still, I kind of like death.
Kind of the final.
It felt like death spasms, let's be honest.
Yeah.
The Giants are holding on for dear life. They've got this Vayne, they think, hey, maybe she's going to do something. She only has a single item, but hey, maybe it'll happen right now. And while this is, at the end of the day, well executed with the resources that Giants have, Schalke are just too far ahead, Deficio. There's just not, you just don't have the damage to win this fight.
This was like the perfect ulti from the Orianna to try and set up Vayne to get a few kills, and while they did pick up one, the problem now is, technically with the Vayne comp, you kind of want to kite back a little bit and let her just kind of hit whatever target is in front of her, and she can slowly kill these tanks. When you're this far down, you don't get to decide how to fight. You just kind of follow what the enemy team is doing, and they just killed their instant, like the front line of Giants just died, and they're like, yeah, is that a Vayne over there? Is that an Orianna? Whatever, we can just dive onto them. And Caedrel on this LeBlanc, when he saw that blind pick Orianna, bam, that was the answer for him. And he's shown this before in the Challenger series, where when he's on LeBlanc and they play around him, he can snowball the game very effectively. And it's cool to see the versatility from him, because again, he can also play more of the team style. We've seen the late game focus with Corki. A lot of different picks from Caedrel, and he's actually finding success on quite a lot of them.
Now, once again, to round this segment out, I feel like we do have to look back at the draft, because it feels like it's always come back to team compositions coming out. And we looked at the side with the Orianna, with the Vayne, we say, hey, you make it to late game, that's a great comp, but you don't get there and things start to fall apart. So to me, we watched Orianna get destroyed in the mid lane, right? But if they draft something stronger in the bottom lane, do they need to be as worried about maybe sacrificing mid lane and having this matchup that suffers?
I mean, if you take the situation right here with the Orianna, I think one of the problems was that it was a Maokai next to her. So you can't really help the Orianna, even if you wanted to. Let's just pretend it was a Rek'Sai. And you were actually the one trying to constantly commit to mid as well, and try and see if you could maybe balance out the 2v2. That is one solution I've seen some teams pull off. If they're playing a lot of late game scaling, they need an early game jungler to kind of secure it a little bit. It is still super risky. I just do not want to see Vayne. Please remove her from any of the games I'm watching. And then also at the same time, if you are going to play late game AD carry, you need some early game somewhere. You can't just go full on scaling.
All right, at the end of the day, this is it. The moment of truth for Giants in Schalke. Which team will be the newest addition to the LCS? The decider is just minutes away. Don't go anywhere.